Okay. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I know this was sort of last minute, but I wanted to give you some details on a pretty tragic event and then go into what this looks like for the Spokane Police Department moving forward over the next couple of years. I wanted to let you know that ensuring the public safety of our community is our top priority. The recent tragic loss of 13-year-old Gavin Looper, who was fatally shot while playing video games in a friend of his father's home, underscores the urgent need to address gun violence in our city. Our hearts go out to Gavin's family, his friends, his schoolmates during this unimaginable, difficult time. Earlier today, due to the extraordinary efforts of our investigative staff, the suspect in this case was located and arrested in Missoula, Montana. I cannot praise the detectives, patrol officers, and commanders who were involved in this case from the very beginning 4 days ago for their almost nonstop efforts. It truly is extraordinary. To my right here is Captain Tracy Meidel, who oversees this division. To my left is Lieutenant Nate Spearing, who is her second in command. I definitely want to call out the Major Offenders Unit and the Special Investigations Unit, who spearheaded this investigation. And like I said, they worked this case almost nonstop for the past 4 days. Gun violence does not just impact an individual or a family. Gun violence impacts neighborhoods, schools, and the entire community. The trauma spreads outward from the incident over time and space. According to the Center for Disease Control, gun violence is the #1 cause of death for young black men. It's the #2 cause of death for young Latino men. Gun violence is killing our children. Prior to this tragedy, SPD created its 2025-2026 strategic plan. The #1 strategic priority in that plan is to reduce gun violence. That was posted on our website just yesterday. This was written months ago. The #1 priority in our strategic plan is reducing gun violence. We are exploring the following strategies moving forward into 2025 and 2026. Hotspot policing, social network analysis, focused deterrence, community-based violence intervention, both street outreach and intervention, and hospital-based violence intervention. A gun crime intelligence unit, utilizing NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, in conjunction with the ATF. A strategy that's relatively new, it's called Place Network Investigations. It's receiving a great deal of attention in other parts of the country. It's super labor intensive, but it's showing enormous reductions in gun violence where it's being implemented. And a tactical investigation model, where we're actually using a patrol-centered unit to address gun violence at the street level. And lastly, re-engineering violent crime investigations, prioritizing gun violence as the #1 investigation that we have to put our efforts into. We will also continually intentionally engage with community leaders, faith groups, and local organizations to foster cooperation in violence prevention and to support affected families. We know and recognize that law enforcement cannot solve this or any other social problem on our own. We have to co-produce safety with the community. We have to walk hand in hand with our community. And that's the reason why I called you here today. This was not only a tragic event, it was an extraordinarily outrageous event. The community should be outraged. Our children are dying at the hands of gun violence. We have to do something, and we need to do something in conjunction and partnership with our community. We encourage residents to report concerns and work with us to create safer neighborhoods. It's a shared responsibility. Transparency and accountability are key to maintaining trust. Our officers undergo ongoing training in de-escalation, conflict resolution, and bias awareness to ensure fair and just policing. Fair and just policing, along with all the other strategies that I just discussed, are how we're going to get to a place where we're significantly reducing gun violence over time in Spokane. I speak publicly a lot, and one of the things I mention is I rarely hear about gun violence when I'm out in the community. I hear about homelessness, I hear about low-level crime and disorder, I rarely hear about gun violence. Spokane has an issue with gun violence. We have to address it, and we need to address it with the community. And so I'm challenging the community to recognize this issue and work with us. Secondarily, we're we're noticing a trend, an ongoing trend, not just here in Spokane, but across the country, where our offenders in gun violence are becoming increasingly more youthful. The ages are coming down as the violence increases. This is concerning to all of us and should be concerning to the entire community. Where these folks are getting their guns and how they're utilizing these guns at very, very young ages is an issue. And I want to be very clear here. Gavin Looper did not have a gun, was not engaged in criminal behavior, was sitting on his couch playing video games when he was killed. The loss of Gavin Looper is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of gun violence. Our hearts go out to his family, his friends, and his school. We remain committed to working hand in hand with our community, elected officials, law enforcement partners to ensure safety and security for all. Together, we can have an impact in this space of gun violence. I think I'll conclude there. I'll give a little bit of time for questions. I cannot get into detail about the investigation. However, you can also address questions to Captain Meidel, Lieutenant Spearing as well. Thank you very much.
I'll go. So how is this plan going to shift resources around the department that seems to be pretty overwhelmed already with the amount of calls and staffing and cases that you guys already have? Like, I see a lot of people kind of complain about where these resources are going. Obviously, this is a big deal, but how are you going to manage, priority and like where to place these officers and things like that?
Well, that's what you just mentioned it. It's priorities, and how do we prioritize limited resources? And quite frankly, I just have to put it out there that it's the sanctity of human life, and my priorities are going to saving people's lives in the city of Spokane. And in particular, and you can go onto the CDC's website, you can see how this impacts young people overwhelmingly. And so I feel compelled to prioritize our resources to save people from gun violence. And there are data-informed ways, evidence-based, that this can be done, and I just listed them for you.
Do you have statistics on hand by chance at all? Just how many people who have died from gun violence in the last year, or kids, or anything like that that you can think of, or is that not on hand?
I know last year we had 19.
10 of them were by gun violence. Homicides. Correct.
Okay.
Within
Just the city.
within the city, right? We had almost 100 shooting incidents with right at 45 victims, people who suffered a gunshot injury. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Hunter Bertram with KXLY. Just kind of talking about the incident. We don't really know much of what happened right now. How did we go about identifying Glenn Berkey? I know on the police scanner that night we heard his name pop up. Was it, do we know right away? I mean, could we talk a little bit about what happened night leading up? Was there an altercation, or was it genuinely random as stated?
The only thing I'll address to that is there was an altercation, and the suspect was known to folks in that residence.
Okay. And did anybody shoot back from inside the residence?
I'm not at liberty to say that.
Do you know how he was found? How Missoula identified him?
I do.
Okay, so okay, so you can't speak to that.
Correct.
Okay.
Chief Paul, Amanda Rowley with KREM 2. Can you speak to, or can you clarify what metrics the department will use to measure the success of these strategies that you've laid out?
At the very basic level, it's going to be a reduction in shootings, both fatal, non-fatal, and injury, non-injury. A lot of shootings we get coming in, we find evidence of a shooting, we get calls of a shooting, but there's no victim. So we just pick up cartridge casings in the street. I would assert that if we treat every shooting as if it were a homicide, if we put all of our efforts into those shootings, then we're going to see an impact from that effort. And that's why I went into, Spokane needs its own NIBIN machine. We don't have a NIBIN machine here. And we are the urban hub for Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho. So I am having those conversations with the ATF on how we can get our own NIBIN machine here and how we can start working to do our own analysis, our ballistic analysis, so that we can start linking these guns. What we know, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, about crime concentrations, most of these shooters are responsible for a lot of the shootings that happen out here. So a small number of offenders, large number of shootings, and you link that through NIBIN, and it works. I've seen it over and over where multiple shootings are tied back to one gun and one offender.
And also, just talking with neighbors in the area, I'm not speaking to the investigation specifically, but neighbors in the area where the shooting happened, they've expressed just concern with the home where the shooting happened. With this strategy rolling out, what is your message to those neighbors who don't feel safe when a certain individual is back home?
Keep calling. Keep calling. A lot of folks say, oh, well, I don't call 911 because nothing happens. And I have to reiterate, if you don't call 911, we don't get the information. And if it doesn't rise to the level of a patrol response, and maybe it goes to crime check or some other alternative response, at least we have the information, we have the data. And when we sit down and we look at where we want to allocate our resources, if there's no 911 calls there aren't going to be any resources applied there. I have to put cops where the crime's occurring.
What do you say to I just gotta ask, I mean, what do you say to those who don't think calling 911 is enough to address problem house in the area?
I have to reiterate, then just keep calling. The squeaky wheel does get our attention.
Chief Hall, I have a question. I'm Steffi Rush with KHQ. For Glenn Berkey, the suspect in this specific case, he did have multiple cases where he pleaded guilty to criminal mischief. And some of those cases were investigated as other potential drive-by shootings. So can I ask, how important is the work that SPD is doing right now to ensure that this case gets to trial?
I can tell you that the work doesn't stop now. And in fact, as hard as the investigators, the commanders, the sergeants worked on this, it's going to continue to make it trial ready. And to continue to gather evidence, to continue to gather eyewitness testimony, to continue to gather forensic digital evidence. All of the stuff that we can do now, it didn't all just happen in the past 4 days. It's going to continue for months.
I have a follow-up question. You know, some in the community say that the criminal justice system produces insufficient sentences for people convicted of violent crimes in Washington state. So what would you say to someone who believes this, and is there anyone really to blame?
I would say that the criminal justice system is actually several different systems. Law enforcement is sort of the gatekeeper of the criminal justice system, and then once we make an arrest, that goes to prosecutors, public defenders. And once they do their work, it goes to the judiciary, judges and magistrates. And then once they do their job, it goes to corrections. So the control I have is over a very small number of people in the Spokane Police Department, and I have very little control over those other systems, but they're all integrated and they all impact each other. So I do believe some reform can occur so we can more closely integrate those systems and be more aligned on particularly violent crimes and violent offenders.
Chief, is the Violent Crimes Task Force still in existence?
We are no longer a part of that due to the staffing issues we suffered just before I got here.
And for the next steps in this Glenn Berkey case, is he being extradited soon? When can we expect him to be in Spokane County Jail?
That is a process that's going to take cooperation between Missoula and Spokane and the prosecutor's office. So we will probably, I would say in the next 24, 48 hours, we will have an answer for you.
Another question, sorry. So a lot of people have said, like, you know, people who are homeless are committing X, Y, and Z crimes. But I'm also wondering, like, statistically, if you notice a specific group of people engaged in gun violence, like, what does that look like in Spokane? Like, is it the homeless community, or is it people who live in houses that are frequent flyers in the justice system? Like, what does that, I guess, look like in terms of the types of people that are engaging in gun violence?
I can answer that generally, and then I'll let Lieutenant Spearing answer that specifically over the past year. Generally speaking, it is not homeless individuals who are committing gun violence. They are generally involved in low-level crime disorders, open-air drug use, street-level drug trafficking, that type of incidents. But as far as gun violence, that is generally a whole different group of offenders.
And the chief talked about NIBIN, and obviously that connects evidence from one shooting with evidence from another shooting that came from the same firearm. In some of our cases, especially over the course of the last year, we've seen several incidents tied together by NIBIN. Now, where that firearm went and who possessed it at the time are focuses of ours. What we're seeing is it is not a common occurrence that things like this are random acts. There is some type of target, some type of interaction or previous interaction between the suspects and the victims in these cases. So to answer your question, it spans a broad spectrum of where folks live or don't live, but it is, if you're asking on a stereotypical displaced person, that's not typically what we see.
Like, are we talking like targeted, like drug? Like when you say like altercations, are you meaning like altercations revolving around drug use or like specific crimes? Like,
It, again, completely depends on the investigation. We have seen the, targeted where it is a domestic violence relation, where it is a drug relation, where it is a prior associate relation, and for whatever reason, the altercation occurred. That is no one outlier answer to cover that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know earlier you kind of said that Glenn Bjerke was known to the house, or you have to say a relation to the people at that house, or any of that? Is he a friend of
I'm uncomfortable drilling that down right now. Quite frankly, I just don't know.
Okay, do we have maybe a timeline of when we might know more about what happened, or is it just kind of wait to see what happens?
I think as he gets back to Spokane, as the prosecutors are able to review the case, as the detectives are able to finish up doing all that follow-up work that we just discussed, then we'll be able to be more transparent with the information that comes out. We'll also spend a little bit more time with the family, make sure that they get all the information that's coming out here now, and do what we can for them. But just going back to the earlier question, this is. Most of the strategies that I outlined earlier are based on one simple sort of concept, and that is violence, particularly gun violence, is contagious. It's a social contagion, and that's why we see small concentrations of offenders. If somebody is involved in gun violence, either as a victim or offender, we know there's a 50% chance that they're also going to be an offender or a victim in the next 12 months. And that's where social network analysis comes in, where you start looking at all the people that surround an offender or a victim, and you know they are at risk. And that's how we can start impacting some of this. Not so much through enforcement, particularly if they're a victim, but through interventions and finding out what can we do to make them less risky and not be a victim or not be an offender in the future.
I just have one last question. Earlier I was speaking with neighbors of the house where the shooting took place, and they said, a child was killed and they kind of expect to see maybe some more action going on. Is there any, steps you guys are taking to, patrol that area? Are you taking any steps, to kind of stay looking around what's going on after this kind of substantial event happened in that neighborhood?
Yeah, well, because it's an isolated incident to that house and the interaction was between the folks who lived there and the folks who visited there, it's not like it was a public space like a park that draws this, groups of young individuals together, or an open air drug market, where we know violence is going to occur. So I guess the quick answer is probably not. But you can expect that the officers, just because of the enormity of the event, will spend a little bit more time in the area.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're about done. I unfortunately still have a lot of work to do. So thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate it.